you again,
Thanks
Sonia,
so much.
Sasape, and Guillermo for staying up late staying up late or getting up early. This is quite stunning that all of you get together, and it really means so very much to us. So we have with us now Onaiza Drabu from the Kashmir region. We have Joned from Indonesia. We have Rachel Cooper here from the Great Asia Society in New York. We have Tung-Yen, and we have Wu-Kang Chen with us from Taiwan. And of course, perhaps it's a little bit more morning hours there. We move a bit in the session, but it was, I don't know if you were able to listen in. It was quite stunning to hear what's happening in Thailand. And I was completely surprised. It was not long ago, like 4 weeks, she was kind of so hopeful. And this is a stunning turn of events. But Onaiza, let's start with you first. But let's just say a very quick hello. Rachel, where are you and what time is it?
I'm in New York City, and it's 11 o'clock in the evening.
Thank you. Joned, where are you?
Hi, Frank. Yeah, I'm in Indonesia right now in my own place in Jogja, and it's 10 p.m. right now.
10 p.m. of tomorrow. AM. Oh, good. Yeah, but still, you live in the future. Yes, great. Yeah. And Wu-Kang, where are you?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm in Taipei, and it's 11 a.m. right now.
It's 11 a.m. Okay. And Jan, you're, I guess, also in Taipei?
Yes, Taipei too.
Taipei too.
Yes.
Well, I can hear from the update from all of you. And Tanvi, thanks for joining us again. Tanvi is the one who also curated this incredible array of Indian artists. It's the first time also that online, such a large group of Indian artists with 8 different languages and time zones and all the regions of India come together. Someone actually suggested, maybe it should be the beginning, of a organization of Indian theater workers, and to get, perhaps better conditions. Onaiza, what's happening where you are? What's happening in the Kashmir region? What's going on?
So good morning. I'm in Kashmir. It's 8:30 a.m. and it's Eid. So Eid Mubarak to everyone.
What time is it? Sorry, say again.
8 a.m. And it's Eid. So Eid Mubarak to everyone. Things are okay here. Actually, they're much better than before. It was not as bad as mainland India in terms of the pandemic. Things are slowly opening up and life is resuming. It's wedding season, so things are starting up. I mean, I don't know what it'll be like in a few months, but it's just much calmer than it was before. And there's a sense of relief around. Yes, that's I haven't lived in Kashmir for the last 15 years, and I moved here just before the pandemic. I moved here 3 days before the pandemic. I used to live in Kenya. And I just one day had this like strange premonition that I need to pack up and leave. And I packed up and left and moved back. And in 5 days, there was a lockdown announced. So that's it's been lucky. I've been enormously privileged to be here in this.
Tell us a bit what you do.
I am a writer. So I work on folklore. I work in Kashmiri folklore, and I work on language a little bit. I also translate from Kashmiri to English. So I'm really privileged to be joining this group of theater makers. And as a writer, I'm really grateful to be here. So this is what I do. I also run an online platform that curates South Asian artists and writers from history and tries to like digitize it and bring it to newer audiences. So in a way, a curatorial exercise where we dig out writers from the past, from the Indian subcontinent, not specifically India, and bring them in a digital format, in an innovative format with like translations back to a format which the newer generation, like the Gen Z and millennials, they understand better. So that's what I do.
That's quite something. So you feel the situation in Kashmir is not bad, has never been bad, or it got better?
It was bad a few months ago, but I would say that in comparison to mainland India, we've had it really lucky. I suppose it's a factor of Kashmir being a region which is really used to lockdowns. When I moved here, I very often people would joke with me that, this is going to be normal life for Kashmir. So there's really nothing that's different. And in a way, it's true. We're better to quarantine than a place that has been in lockdowns, where lockdowns are a lifestyle. We've had lockdowns for like almost 3 decades. We're experts in hoarding. We've like saved up from famines to like snowfall to curfews. It's just a way of life for us. So in a way, I feel like the restrictions weren't new to people in Kashmir as they were to India. I wouldn't say that there's a lot more precautions, but really, I suppose it's also that we're lucky to have open space. So the weather is all right. We don't really need to be indoors very much. It's spread out. It's not as crowded as the rest of India. So it's a bit different here. And I mean, I grew up in Kashmir in the 1990s, where you really didn't leave home very much because of the situation, especially as younger children, etc. So this is almost, I mean, a bit similar, I would say. I mean, it's no comparison at all, but I know last year there were lots of memes being shared about how, India put Kashmir into lockdown on the 5th of August, 2019. And then all of India just sort of went into lockdown themselves. It's almost like the Kashmiris willed it upon them. But I mean, really, it's a joke of it's a joke that went around last year.
Mm. And how are vaccination numbers? Is there
I mean, I suppose all of the people who wanted to get vaccinated did. I think there was a big rush in the few months, but it's really, really minimal because of a lot of these hoax videos that were circulated about, vaccines causing impotence, vaccine causing like all sorts of magnetic reactions to the body. And my mother is a doctor, and she sort of has pandemic response here. So I see even people in our own household, people who are associated with us will not get the vaccine because there's this fear about the side effects of it and all of these. I think the digital space is very interesting in Kashmir because I think it's also it also links to performance, and it's also what I'd like to actually talk about, where a lot of creativity is online in Kashmir because there's no public spaces where you'd actually engage. There's no performance spaces. There's a lot of censorship. So a lot of like writing will happen online. A lot of like expression through art, literature, poetry, all of that would be censored by mainstream media, and that happens online. So that means digital adoption is sort of quite high in Kashmir as compared to other places, and a lot of like conversation engagement happens here. So a lot of hoax videos, a lot of like misinformation, all of that is spread through these means as well. So it's space for both rumor, but it's also space for a lot of creativity. It's a space for expression. It's a space for engagement, for art, really. So I think that ties in. There's a lot of misinformation.
Mm. Tell us a bit. So you said there is not so many places to what. So do you go and see theater? Are there places before, during lockdown, and at the moment? Will there be after Corona? Tell us a little bit. How is everyday life when it comes to the performing arts?
So I would say that in the last few years, it's actually been not very great at all, because since 2016 and probably even a little before that, all of summer has been embroiled in protests. So there's some sort of agitation that stirs up. It goes back to the 1990s, which is when sort of this performance spaces, outdoor spaces, cinemas, all of that was shut. And since then, the resistance movement at the Indian state was at its peak in the 90s. And there was no going out during that time. So whatever you had to do within the four walls of, your homes, like safe spaces, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of the performances, theater, et cetera, probably was patronized by the state. So naturally, a large population was alienated from it because a large population always does not see itself as associated with the Indian state. Obviously, there's an agenda at play always. So there's a disassociation from that. Folk theater actually is much more popular. Folk stories, folk theater is actually much more popular, but that's in smaller areas, in neighborhoods. There's a lot of music that's popular, again, in private spaces. So public space, public engagement is not very much. I think the government back in 2003 to 2005 tried it a lot. There were NGOs that do it. There's one theater space where there's like a space for people to perform, but very often it's just shut up. It's holed up. In the 1990s, this one big theater space that existed here was like occupied by the army, and they just made bunkers inside it. And there went a renovation, but like back since 2016, every summer there have been mass protests, and therefore mass curfews, and therefore internet shutdowns. So really, there is both, I mean, a hesitance in going outdoors and actually watching, being in open air spaces and being in spaces that are crowded, but also because there's associations with either the Indian state or with like Indian hegemony in a lot of the performances that happen here. I would say there's not as much engagement physically, because even when I think composers, performers, when they come in here, it's always brought by the Indian state for like a select audience. So the everyday person also has a sort of negative reaction towards it. Growing up, I didn't see a lot of theater here. I think I saw 2 plays in the same theater place that I talk about, and it was just not a thing. And increasingly so, it's become even more and more closed. And that is why I feel digital takes center stage, because not only is it a performance space, but it's also a recreation of home that happens. So people share photos. A lot of diaspora exists, so they share photos of like back in the day what Kashmir would look like, what the language looks like, what like cultural objects, material culture looks like. So there's both a preservation of memory, there's both a recreation of home. All of that I think happens online, and the online space is very fertile in Kashmir, both in terms of writing, in terms of art, in terms of just poetry, and even folk theater, where a lot of practitioners are taking to the internet to let's say Instagram to actually share videos, share performances, and then for instance through that they get like hired for private events.
Incredible. It almost sounds like a future COVID state. People stay at home. There are no public performances. If you want to get vaccinated, you can, but you stay. But there's so much outside in your own home. There's enough space. You won't have, the New York subway. People say, why are the infections so high in New York? Well, we have 3 airports, one of the big ones in the world, and the subway system that transports millions of people, and just 500,000 people come out almost every morning out of Penn Station and go back. So it is very different. Onaiza, in case you plan a reading, let us know what it's about and how long it is, and if not, we have some more questions, of course, for you.
I actually would like to talk about another thing which relates
Yes.
to the and then I have like a 1 minute sort of.
Good. Okay, so we have enough time. Yeah.
Yes. So last year, I think looking at what was happening with Kashmiri internet, this like sharing of photos, memories, and this like positive space that was recreated. The digital publication that I run with my co-founder Prachi, it's called Dark, and while we do as a publication cover artists, writers, etc., but also as an Instagram handle, we often engage in this like memory nostalgia exercise of like posting photos from the past, posting art from the past. And I think at that time we realized during the pandemic that that there was a lot of suffocation, and there was a sort of lack of hope in the people that engage with us on social media. So what we did was we created something like a crowdsourced archive of memories of like a virtual tour of cities, where we'd ask people to share moments of the different places they'd like to be in the pandemic, because the Indian lockdown was very, very strict. Flights were suspended. You could not like drive from one place to another, even within a state, within a city even. So it was very, very strict. So there was a sense of suffocation. There was a loss of hope amongst these people. So what we did was that in this time when personally, both for Prachi and I, it was not a creative phase. It was just very suffocating to not be able to produce, to be able to write. What we did was we like turned into our roles as facilitators. So what we did was curate this crowdsourced like horde of photos and created sort of a virtual tour, a virtual time travel tour thing, where people were sharing photos from their grandfather's time of a city, and then we get a perspective of someone who did it from a month ago and someone who did it 5 years ago, to sort of view this. And all of this again happened on Instagram. All of this was like a virtual tour, and then it was super interesting because a lot of series then ran forth from it. So we write postcards. So we did this like letter exchange where people could find secret pen pals, and we'd like pair them up with people across the world, and they'd handwrite letters. And I feel like people were craving connection in this time. And just this exercise of just connecting people through just this platform of Instagram was super interesting. And at the same time, what we also saw was this like surge in poetry relating to like hope, poetry about wandering, poetry about moving, which I think addressed the two key themes of I suppose South Asian youth in the pandemic, which is hopelessness and this feeling of being restricted within their homes. And with that, I would like to actually read these two very, very short verses that just kept floating around over and over again. Every few weeks they'd reappear. And I think they really resonated with people. And the first one is this verse by this poet called Faiz Ahmed Faiz. And it's called Dil Na Umeed. Dil na umeed to nahi, naakaam hi to hai, lambi hai gham ki shaam, magar shaam hi to hai. So it translates as, the heart has not lost hope, but just a fight, that is all. The night of suffering is long, but it is just a night after all. So I think this verse was really powerful in the way that it was consumed by so many younger people who probably had not an introduction to this poet before. And the other one is just a very, very short line. It's by this Punjabi poet called Amrita Pritam, and it's called Mera Pata. And it says, Jahan bhi azad ruh ki jhalak pade, samajhna wo mera ghar hai. And it translates as, wherever you catch a glimpse of a free spirit, know that it is my home. And that's it. I think both these themes had such a powerful resonance in the pandemic with young people. But that's all.
Yeah. So the idea of the free spirit, and that this is a night, you have to hold on, and something will come, light will come at the end of it. Well, I know Abhishek, who's not now at the moment, but he did a big play about Kashmir. Actually, we had it both with us at the Siegel Center, that James of Aida, I think it was, kids playing soccer and in Kashmir. So what are your feelings? What do you see as an artist, as a writer? What do you see as the future coming?
I actually don't know. I think it's very unpredictable. But what I will again harp on about the digital, but I feel like there is something there that democratizes both voice, space, removes the like power structures at play. And I feel like there needs to be more of a seriousness in trying to see how we can adapt digital platforms to create. Mm-hmm. And I know there is, I think, an inherent bias, a seriousness of obviously of print publications, for instance, but I feel like there's an equal amount of power, if not more power, with digital platforms nowadays, because they're just all pervasive. And I think it can be played with really well to actually suit our new way of life. Yeah.
That idea that it's a private experience, but it's communal, it's shared by everybody who wants to, but you do it at your own. You often touch the screen with your finger, something very intimate. And it's interesting. Umberto Eco was no longer with us, but when he was asked about the internet, the new media and digital storage, and how horrible it might be or not, and he said, well, listen, the idea of the book is not so old. Painting is old. Sculptures are old. Indonesian sculptures, we're going to come to, they are. Book is not so old. It was about information, and people hated it in the very beginning. And there's just the idea that you could read the Bible in the original language, but people are not in Latin too for small casts. It was revolutionary. So we will see. It's the first time I hear this kind of a big hope towards that kind of digital a collection or an archive in a very serious way that actually keeps a region, a community together instead of driving it apart. This is the main, what we normally hear. It is just driving a wedge between already divided places. So that's quite hopeful, and it's wonderful that we could hear from you, and also you presented in such a wonderful way. So really, thank you. It's a privilege, to have you here with us. And I hope you can stay and listen. And we now move on to places that seem so far away. It's New York and in Indonesia, it's Jakarta, I think. But on the other hand, they are so strongly connected when we had Rimini Protocol with us, Daniel, and we talked about making the invisible connection visible. And I think this 424-hour marathon also does that, not only what Tanvi curated, you know, the connection between all the Indian artists, but also between the global development. So maybe Rachel, if it's okay, we start with Joned. Joned, how are you, and what's going on in Indonesia? When we talked the last time, it sounded complicated.
Yes, thank you, Frank, and thank you for inviting me to the talk. Well, as I said, I'm not in Indonesia. It's been 2 months since I left New York in May to be back to Indonesia for my summer break and my preliminary research. And yeah, I'm still observing right now with what's happening and how is the outbreak really changed our life here. And I slowly try to grab, you know, what the community is trying to do, what they survive, and how the governments also try to manage this outbreak. And to me, it's not a rush. So I try to slowly understand every aspect that is important in our life, including theater and art in general. But right now we still having the like semi-lockdown. That's what I call it. And basically, the government apply emergency public activity restriction policy, meaning people are really encouraged not to have trips to different cities, for example, due to the outbreak. And it should be end today, but it seems like it will be extended for another 5 days. So let's see how it's going. But the case, it was really high the last 2 or 3 days, but now it's a good sign right now that it's slowing down, and it's not, the curve is getting flattened. Hopefully, I need to check once again, but yeah, it's still really really need big attention from us, because it's still happening badly, and so many people affected badly right now.
Yeah, actually, the New York Times yesterday wrote that it moved from the kind of Bangalore region, the epicenter, to Indonesia. That is kind of a very dark moment, a place. I also remember what you said. It used to be in the news, but now it's with family and friends.
Right,
COVID.
yes. And so because, and the difference is because Indonesia is archipelago. So it's a lot of islands that we have. And actually, in the policy that I just mentioned, applied specifically for Java and Bali, which is the most populated island in the country.
So you have
the
about
rest of it,
to say 15,000.
Yeah.
How many islands do you have in Indonesia? Yeah, it's
yeah, it's like hundreds of islands, including the big, like 5 big one, and then smaller ones, but it's spread across the country as well. So to some extent, as we know, there are some islands that may be isolated from the outbreak because it's archipelagic. So that's also a good way that where people not really travel crossing the islands. But still, because mobility is also more accessible right now, it's also still a big problem, because people travel anyway and they visit different islands. So yeah, so that's something that I'm still figuring out, how this archipelago configuration really playing an important role in the spreading of the outbreak, especially in the case of Indonesia, and how the citizens really reacted.
Tell us a little bit, what do you do in theater, and how is this crisis impacting it? What do you do?
Okay, so right now I'm doing my PhD in theater and performance program in the Graduate Center City Unity of New York, and I'm a theater maker and playwright. But mostly I'm more producing a platform for art practitioners and scholars. Having that say, I'm talking about a conference on Indonesian theater and performance that I initiated with some friends 3 years ago. And then last year, we had the first one online, because it was when the pandemic started to happen. And then this year, we also organizing another conference in September. So that's what I do. Try to get more common ground, and try to facilitate the conversation between a scholar and art practitioners. And in the meantime, I try also to get connected to different artist fellows in Southeast Asia and in Bangkok, in Singapore, or in Manila, for example, or in Kuala Lumpur, that to have a more a deeper conversation in the region in terms of the development of theater and performance, for example.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing right now.
Thank you. It's important. It's amazing work, and for you now to be back there, it's I can only imagine how complicated that must be on so many levels. Rachel, you are creating programs at the Asia Society, one of the great performing arts presenting places in New York City, perhaps in the world. Such wonderful work has come through the Asia Society. You have done it for decades, created, I think, groundbreaking series when it comes to themes. You are monitoring, monitoring the scene in Asia. What's your feeling? What is happening?
Well, I really appreciate what Joned was talking about and the situation. My own background, although I've worked in a lot of Asia, and I've really been honored to work with an incredible array of artists over the years. But my own background was really with Indonesia. So I'm gonna return to a little bit of that right now and just ask Joned, because you're on the ground, and Indonesian artists are often so collaborative, and there's so much that's about people coming together. And what does it feel like at a time where that coming together is not possible in the same way, and there's a kind of isolation? Are you finding also, as our colleague in Kashmir mentioned, that the online is now providing a new opportunity?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Online definitely really helpful platform for us right now to keep everything going. But what I want to underline here is not only the platform, but how the performance and theater tradition actually remains in our everyday life, and that's keep people connected even though we don't meet. And that's really, strong in for example in my own context, and how it's really influenced and shaped the civil society, especially when the emergency situation happening right now. And to be honest, this is something that to me, or something that I need to really reconsider how actually this pandemic really give an idea how art or theater or performance should be implemented in our daily life, even in as a nation and state, for example, in the cultural policy, as something not that only on stage, but in our everyday life as a foster for our civil society. And the outbreak really intensifies this function and this role in art and performance. Yeah.
I think what has been very clear, Frank, kudos to you and to your team in India for putting this together, because I feel like the 24 hours, as I mean, I probably won't make the full 24, but you're doing an amazing job. But I think that there's such a hunger for people to connect across the region, and that maybe it's global, but certainly the idea that there's some commonality and that people in the arts are really hungering to make those connections and find what those new ways are. So I think that's so important. And Joned, the fact that you brought up other parts of Southeast Asia, I think is really important. Of course, what's missing in some ways is Myanmar. It's Burma and what's going on there. And the colleague who spoke earlier about what was going on in Thailand was very moving. And I felt like sometimes the the isolation, or, you know, what you talked about, Onaiza, in Kashmir, about people being already in lockdown for how many years. But in some other situations, there is a political reality that makes it very difficult to be doing the kind of storytelling that is so important, you know, as theater makers.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking about that, and how powerful theater is when you see in some of these authoritarian situations that it's just the theater makers and the poets that are arrested or tortured. So if you thought it was just dessert, you know, it's really at the core, I think, and that's very powerful. So, you know, what I'm deeply moved by in this whole 24 hours, at least I've been on since morning our time, so I don't know, what are we getting towards, 14 hours, is how many voices are coming together and how people are sharing the room.
Mm-hmm. How is it for you that Asia Society is closed? Your stage is closed. You normally build bridges. Do you feel it's something will be hard to reconnect? Is that a?
You know, it's kind of, in a weird way, it's kind of magical, because, and I'm going back to the situation in Kashmir, the idea that you can connect globally, and that we need to do that. You know, I don't have to get a visa to be on this phone call. I don't have to raise tens of thousands of dollars. I think that the depth of the storytelling and creativity needs further development. And I think that we're in a hybrid world where I think being in person is really an important component, but finding ways to bring that world and share it more broadly also is. So I think we're in a time of experimentation.
Yeah. And now for me, as someone who's interested, I could now say, oh, let me look at the online archive in the Kashmir region, you know, and I might then think about coming and visiting. And I don't know, Joned or Rich, in case you prepared something to read, maybe it's a time now, but we can also go on with the conversation.
I don't have something to read, but I just want to use this opportunity to express my deepest condolences and my deepest sympathy to our loss. All artists who passed away during the outbreak. And in Indonesia alone, we have lost many great artists.
It's a big, it's a big community. Is the community has really been affected?
Yes. So it is a big loss for us. And also at the same time, I would also show my gratitude to all fellow artists, as well as spaces like Martin Siegel, HowlRound, who keep the events running. And this is always, as Rachel said, magical, because we get connected globally right now despite the pandemic. So once again, I just really want to express my gratitude to all of the spaces and artists who keep the light up.
So Rachel, you mentioned Myanmar or Burma, but yeah, go to it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It feels like we're in this unique moment, and yet we know things have happened in the past. And so I just wanted to leave us with a lontar that was from Bali, that's about 200 years ago. So a lontar is a palm leaf inscription. And so I talked to a scholar who was doing research on that, and he talked about that this old lontar said, you know, when the big sickness comes, it's okay to do your devotion in your house. You don't all have to come together. The important thing is the niyat, the intention. And in some way, that to me is about a bigger idea that all of us are taking on, which is our intention to do the work that we're doing and our intention to connect.
That's really good. Let's say that again. If the big sickness comes, it's
So
okay to stay at your house.
Yes.
But your
so,
intention has to be
in Bali, people come together with big ceremonies. with
Yeah.
everyone coming together
For days, yeah.
for days. So this Lontar says, if a big sickness comes, the important thing is the intention of how you're looking at your devotion. The importance is not that you followed every rule. The importance is the intention. So to me, that's a very powerful idea. And
Very
I feel
powerful.
it's what we who are working in the arts are also trying to do. It's the intention. And I would say the intention needs to be authentic, meaning from the heart. I don't mean authentic as in an ancient tradition. I mean the authenticity of as in genuine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite powerful. And I also remember things. I think you once talked about traditions, which once we can come back together should point towards to like people who guide discussions in groups to come to an agreement where people then agree on something we perhaps have lost. Tell us a bit about that tradition.
Musiawara. I mean, this comes from Arabic. Some of these terms come from Arabic, and it means consensus. It means it's not democracy. Like if I got 51 people and you only have 49, I win. It's that you talk it through until you can find a consensus. It's a really different model, and I think it's an important model. I'm not going to.
And it's practiced in Bali, if I remember it right, or.
Well, yes. I mean, that's where I learned about it in Bali, but that the concept is not unique to only Bali.
Mm. Yeah, I think, as I said, we had Kirill Serebrennikov, a great Russian director who runs the Gorky in Moscow, who said, we have to start from scratch. We have to forget, in a way, what we were being taught, what we learned. It's a time to reinvent, to get back together. And one of the things he said, what he learned in the lockup, it's not our job to think that everybody comes and adores us as artists. He says, we have to teach the young kids about Chekhov, about the writers, about everybody. We have to engage. He opens the doors for his theater. He says artists and audiences go in the same entrance. All the artists stay after the performances. So he's trying to have a very big impact. And this idea of consensus, which is kind of, an idea, if I understood right, is practice, that people really guide discussion with quite a big amount of people and come to a consensus instead of the oppression, instead of what we heard before in Thailand, from Chile, also parts of India, the non-listening, and if we learn anything, we have to learn again to listen. Joned, any last words? We can coming closer. We have a minute and a half.
Yeah, I just really concerned about what has been intensified during the outbreak, that it was invisible before, like the gap between the government and the state with the citizen, for example, that now is really intensified during the outbreak. And I think we should work together to develop this kind of conversation, and just to get the better sense of how we have to deal with this outbreak. So I think that's something that I have learned here from the last 2 months since I came back to Indonesia.
Yeah, and the outlook is, at the moment at least, when these are not so great. How are vaccination rates do you know, in Indonesia? How many?
Well, so I just read that in Jakarta it's getting higher right now, so it's like 50% and
really
more. And yeah, so we try to get the herd immunity as possible. I think that's the idea, because the Delta variant is so uncontrolled. So I think the one best way is also to get the herd immunity,
put it together. Yeah, I think,
and people start lining up for the vaccine. Yeah,
I think Tanvi shared with us, if it's right, only 1 or 2% in India has been vaccinated. Of course, it's a big country. It's a big, but still, it's such a big failure
that's in
in a way.
Jakarta. But yeah, but what I'm talking is just in Jakarta, in the capital, because that's one of the reddest zone right now. But in the rest, I think we're still working on it.
Yeah, quite interesting that Tanvi's father is a doctor. Onaiza's father, that there seems to be some healing that needs to be taken place, and the people who lead now, who take charge, or who organize, put things together, as Rachel pointed out, but Indonesian art also put it, are also people who really have a strong sense that there's some healing, some understanding needs to take place. So let's move on right away to our next sessions. Thank you, Joned and Rachel. Of course, we could talk so much longer, and we come to the third part, and we're going to hear from Taiwan and Chou and Wu-Kang, if I say it right. So tell us a little bit what's going on. Wu-Kang, maybe you start off. So how is the mood? How's the feeling? How's the atmosphere?
It's still very optimistic because it seems like our government is trying to do their job, and because the leader of the healthcare department, they always have the press conference on time. Sometimes they have to shift and just to give the basic information and the new guideline, keep informed the new policy to make people feel safe, but still that our vaccinated rate is very low. It's below 1%.
Really?
Yeah, it's very strange.
No, before, like 2 months ago. Yeah.
Oh, 2 months ago.
2 months
Yeah.
ago.
2-3 months ago. But now it's around 20.
20.
And
not
sorry
fully.
not fully. Yeah.
But not fully.
20
So,
for the first dose.
Some people are still very skeptical about this vaccine, because it seems to some people that the longer you wait, the better the vaccine is going to get, and a lot of side effects still coming. So like my parents are, it's the general atmosphere that the old people, when they go get vaccine, they always write something on internet. It's like a death note. They don't know what's going to happen. It's really strange. And so like my father has 17 years of Parkinson's. So he was very worried, but there was nothing happened. And the second day after the injection, all the Parkinson's symptoms are gone for 4 days. And he was so happy. It's been 17 days, was dragging his body, was not able to control his body, but right now for 4 days only, 4 days. It's like
incredible.
Breeze.
You need to be careful that he got addicted to.
So it's still a lot of secret behind this. We don't know, and we've been staying in lockdown for 2 months, and no theater, no school, and it's hard to think about plan because plan keep changing. But I think people got used to it and start to work around the rule.
Around the world. Still, it's one of the success stories, if I understand right. Taiwan, has been handled well. It's been also quoted as a model. Yen, how is the experience for you? And Jen,
yes. I'll just share a little bit of background. Like for a year, we have 0 domestic case until this May, and so we were super lucky and very relaxed. And then so of course no one would think of vaccine, and then suddenly we have the outbreak, and then so the number grow up dramatically to 600 per day. But after 2 months of it's not actually full lockdown, like you can still go out, but you need to have all this procedure, and then wear a mask, that kind of thing. But so now that the numbers are more promising, like we have around 15 cases per day, and But I think like what Wu-Kang says, we kind of have a cancellation of everything for a theater maker last year for 1 month or two. And then, so everybody got super busy in the end of last year. And then we didn't see this coming. So that this time, like, I guess it's very different from the other part of the world that it was a continuous situation. It was like you suddenly got this hit again. And then now we are looking to sort of drop, how to say that, to drop down the cautious level. Like you can probably the theater can open again in 2-3 weeks maybe, but still I do feel very difficult to plan anything really.
Okay. Yeah. Still, as far as we know, the Taiwanese government did put out incredible support for the artists, invested really a large amount of money. And so maybe both of you tell us a little bit, what are you doing in theater? What is your, how are you involved in theater and performance? Wu-Kang, if you start.
Sure. Basically, not no stopping, no resting from the pandemic start since last year, because all the institution in Taiwan, performing art institution and cultural ministry, put a lot of money into it, and to it's like a relief fund in a way, and the other one is to for the artists to apply if you can come up with something that can improve the situation or to imagine what the theater is going to be in the future, and you put down the plan and they support you. So far we see a lot of this production online, but because the last wave of pandemic was not as serious as the rest of the world, so we do not believe that transferring performance or moving to digital space is necessary. But after this wave, we definitely, everybody move. Everybody just, it's like a flood. It's just, whoa, let's go. And once it starts, all the artists have to, because it's a semi-lockdown, so we have to stay home and start to exploring through your device more. Before we were looking at was how this theater tradition can continue in theater tradition or in dance. But right now you spend more time on Instagram, on NFT, and to seeing painting and YouTuber. Like in the beginning, all I see was YouTuber in Taiwan, and later globally YouTuber, and you see what they talk about was right.
You're a director, right? You direct and
yeah, I'm a choreographer
in dance. I mean, I think the government put in 15 million, I think something like dollars, additionally to already existing support. That's quite stunning, and it seems to be working. And the idea was to research, how the digital realm could be used. Again, Chou, tell us a bit what you do in theater and performance, and has it impacted your work? Will you work differently even if everything opens up?
I think I would definitely work differently even when everything is opening up again. But and I also feel not so sure about how things will be back. Maybe I'm just accepting that it will never be the same. And so I've been so for the past 2-3 months are these film festivals that focus on VR XR. One of them is Tribeca, the other is Ken, and then also New Image in Paris. So I've been working in theater using new media. So VR is something that fascinates me, and so personally I've been just diving in, like putting hours to experience these form, like how it can be, because we had this mirage of how it will change our ways of seeing in 2017, and it never really happened, and then all the big company are pull their budget away. But then I start to see the potential of these very specific medium. So that's something that I've been doing. I originally in this year's Taipei Art Festival, I'm invited to make a work that used partially in VR and partially real experience, theater experience, and then it got canceled. And then there were a proposal to see if I or all the groups want to shift to online. And after a long consideration, I thought I would just not jump to online platform because it was not prepared and planned for that. But and also I've been trying to see online performances in the past 2 months. Just a few days ago, I saw a performance in the UK where they connect remote audience around the world, and then the audience in the theater in UK, which I find it very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite stunning. And I think from what I understand, Taiwanese artists really use this opportunity with some resources given and this kind of low threat situation to really innovate and in some kind of a calm and open experimental way and not under pressure, not being forced in a way to do it. I don't know if you guys prepared any reading. You don't have to, but if so, it's a good time to do now, but we can also go on with our
Yes.
questions.
Yes.
I got it. Okay, you go first.
Please, Wu-Kang first.
Okay.
I also want to share great news of Wu-Kang that he won a prestigious award in art world with his collaboration with Jerome Bell just 2 weeks ago.
Oh, with Jerome Bell together. Yes. Yeah, fantastic. Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's fantastic.
But I only win the second prize. My wife won the first prize.
They are so annoying. Yeah.
Anyway, I really have something to share. After I learned about what happened in India and recently in Indonesia, Thailand, and it's just heartbreaking, but hard to know what to suggest or what I can say to give them hope. And so after I look back, I only have a mantra, even though mantra comes from India. It's today is today. I'm glad it's today. Today is today. I'm glad it's today. Yeah, because we can only think about past and the future, but we are at right now. And the future will reveal to us soon. Thank you.
Wu-Kang, I didn't know you are going to talk about today because the thing that I prepared is titled Tomorrow. And it's actually a pop song I listened to when I was in high school, and I listened to the Mandarin version. But I look up the original version in Japanese, and I'm just gonna share the final few sentences. It's very straightforward, very direct, but I think that's what we need now. It's Tomorrow by Mayo Okamoto. So the last few sentences will be, let's become stronger with a number of tears. Let a flower blowing in the wind. Be yourself just the way you are, because tomorrow will come no matter what time. Tomorrow will come for you. That's it.
Mm-hmm. That's because maybe both of you repeat it. I think this is really beautiful what you said. It's a shorter reading. So you said, today is today.
Today is today. I'm glad it's today.
It is today. Quite beautiful. And please read again. This is such about tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. Tomorrow, Mayo Okamoto. Let's become stronger with a number of tears, like a flower blowing in the wind. Be yourself just the way you are, because tomorrow will come no matter what time. Tomorrow will come for you.
Yeah, it is quite stunning. And also, what Rachel said earlier, at the time of sickness, it's okay to be at home, but have your intention. I mean, this is a quite powerful reflections we are having here in this hour. Maybe I'll open it up to everybody. Maybe you want to comment or say something to your colleagues.
I'm just quite amazed by listening to Onaiza sharing about lockdown lifestyle. I mean, I know there are many phases of it, but then listening to it and then, you know, imagine the open space, and it was just refreshing. And thank you.
I'm really glad, actually. I mean, I feel like I painted like a pleasant picture, but it's not always as pleasant in Kashmir. But
We understand, but we understood that, yeah.
yeah. No, I'm glad.
Yeah. So how is it? I mean, are you actually, in a way, is Taiwan normally following what is happening in Indonesia? Does Indonesia look what's happening in Thailand? How is the communication? You know, there was this reading before that creativity leads, you know, to communication and connection. That's what Sasapin said. Are you in contact? Do you know what your colleagues are doing in these countries?
Frank, I think this is a really interesting question because yes, we're connected online, but don't forget about with the time difference. So even though we are online, we cannot just organize a platform that really invite people from different countries easily. I did a platform last year with a mentor from Europe and then Southeast Asia and also from Indonesia, and we still need to figuring out how to manage the time. So still the time difference is a restriction, but the online still, yeah, it's useful. And in this case, what I learned is how actually regional collaboration has been escalated because the time difference is not that much. So between between Southeast Asia or Southeast Asia with Japan, Southeast Asia with Taiwan, for example, there are a lot of platforms using this slightly different time difference, and this is really a wonderful time to do that because we can easily visit each other.
Yeah. I mean, as Rachel said, I don't need a visa. We don't need visas, right? And to be online, and who knows what one day governments will put up if you're allowed to speak or not. But there is a chance. Rachel, do you think your programming at the Asia Society unit will be radically different when you open up? Let's say everything works well, and
Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
what will be different?
I think that the integrity of being able to connect across geographies has a whole different opportunity, and also the work that we do present live in our theater can more easily be presented to audiences outside of the theater. You don't have to be inside. So it does provide some different spaces. But the other side is I have a new appreciation of the visceral beauty of being in the same room and breathing the same air, and there's no substitute, even though this has been really quite powerful. There's no substitute for being together in a live performance situation. So I also appreciate that as well.
Yeah, that is quite something. I think one of the great changes will be also for us that normally we sort of recording it as archival thing, or for some people, but to really think it through, to say this is actually also sharing in the moment, and in a variation of what Wu-Kang said, the moment is the moment, and I'm glad it's the moment, so that's, and not just, something past. But really, thank you so much. What an enlightening discussion and panel, and we had, so Joned and Rachel and Chou and Bakung's really, that's so gracious and kind of you to share your time and listen in. And also for your colleagues and to everybody out there listening, where so much is happening.